Okay, I'm working on a project now to replace the locks on a Givi Trekker Outbacks series of luggage. I ordered these from motostorm.it, and of course when you order them stock, unless you order them in some sort of a combination, they don't come with the same lock. So my setup has, as you can see, 3 separate locks. So in order to get them all keyed the same, as far as I know, you've got to order something called the Givi SL103 Rekeying Kit. And there are, I believe, 3 of these, an SL101, 2, and 3 for the number of keys that they have. And since I have 3 cases and they're all different sizes, you can see up there I've got a 48 liter and a 37 liter side cases, side panniers, and then I've got a 42 liter top case. And since there's really no way to get them all ordered in a set, I basically had to get this separate rekeying kit. And my bike is an F800 GS, and since the muffler's on the left side, it's an asymmetric mount with a 37 liter on the muffler side and the 48 liter on the free side. So this is what the kit looks like. I ordered this kit itself from Revzilla. They're pretty good at shipping stuff. Shipping time, return policies, and this kit looks like it was obviously a return itself. So these are all the parts it came with. I can tell that there's a Ziploc bag that everything was packed into, so someone just returned it, and so I'm hoping everything I need is sitting right here. One thing you should keep note of if you're going to do this yourself is if you see the keys inside those locks. I have no clue how these were originally packed, but if you see the keys inside those locks, don't pull them out until you need them, because one of the pins inside the lock will fall out if you take the keys out. So leave your keys inside. And one other thing about all the keys, there are 3 separate sets of keys, which is a little bit overkill if you ask me, but they're all the same sets of keys. And then the last thing I'll show you before I get started on this project is what it looks like on the inside. So here's the lock on the outside. Here's my whole lock assembly, and then if you look on the inside, there are 4 screws. And hopefully, let me get this out of the way. I don't know if that's going to show up, but there are 4 screws in there that I'm going to have to undo, and that'll take off the lock assembly. So I'm hoping this is all I've got to do to get this going. So this is the first part of the video. I've got the assembly pulled off, and one thing I should note, there's actually 6 screws. There's 2 at the top, right underneath the lip here, and then there's 4. See if that, hopefully that shows up. So you can see 2 screw holes right there underneath the lip, inside the panniers, and then 4 at the bottom. So over here, you can see now the assembly. 4 screws. Here's what the assembly looks like. That part just popped off. So it looks like this is going to be a pretty simple operation. Alright, here's another look at the back of the assembly. I'm hoping this shows up. It's kind of bright in here. But you can see there's these 3 R's on the back of this thing. One at the top, one on the left side, and one inside that plastic black circle. And that silver piece in there, it's just sitting in there, so it's not really secured with anything else. And you can see this, the nut right there at the top that holds a lock assembly in. But that little metal tab right there that you see, the silver tab, that thing right there goes into that, and that's the piece that locks your panniers to the rack. So that's the thing you pull up on to disconnect it. So the next part will be just unbolting that, and I guess just replacing the cylinder. So again, like I said, this looks like it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, this is the back of the lock assembly, and there's one last little gotcha that you got to look out for when you're putting these things back together. I don't know anything about lock assemblies, so I'm just going to try to describe these parts as best I can. This black piece here is it rotates, and that little tab you see right here in this part, that swings underneath this metal, this silver part, and that's what keeps the lock kind of secure. So underneath, this thing comes up, and underneath it is what looks like a spring and just a tiny little ball bearing sitting on top of it. So when you unbolt this and push the lock out, do your best to do the best job you can to keep this piece where it is. Work on it as flat as you can, I'd say. There's a lot of grease on this little ball bearing that's sitting in there, so it's almost like sticky, and it'll sit there on top of that spring housing if you don't disturb it too much. But if you want to be really careful about it, because if it gets out of there, you might be kind of confused about where it came from, two, how to get it back together. I'm not even going to pull this thing back off because it was such a pain in the butt getting that thing back on there. I don't want to go through that hassle again. So that's the one last little thing that you got to look out for. But besides that, it's pretty much a straight operation. You know, you just unscrew it, 6 screws to get the thing out. Unbolt it here, put your new lock housing in. You don't even need any of the other plastic parts that you get. Really, all you need is the key. These are the old ones. All you need is the key and the lock system, and that's it. You can even reuse the bolt and that washer, that lock washer, if you want. But I mean, I didn't do that. Oh, excuse me, that nut and the lock washer if you want, but I didn't do that. So again, just keep this plastic part as flat as you can when you pull it off, because you don't want to lose that ball bearing, and you don't want to have to deal with trying to put it back on.